Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the show of the week here on the GSMC Fantasy Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by the GSMC Sports Network. My name is Christopher Shepard. Thank you guys for tuning in. Happy Friday. We have made it to the end of the week, and this show is a very special edition. We have for you even more college football win projections, totals, and ultimately my predictions, my input as to what you should bet in terms of the over-under on them. We stick in the SEC, but then to conclude, for the first time, I'm breaking down a group of 5 team and all their win projection totals and the implications for the playoff for them. But before we get into any of that, I do want to remind you guys yet again that you should like, follow, and subscribe to the show and the network. It is greatly appreciated by all concerned with the network, especially me and my fellow podcasters. And if you also do feel so inclined, please consider leaving a tip or donation for now at the link gsmc.cloud. Now, all of this information will surely change once I transition to a live show, which will be happening in 2 weeks' time. I will take a little hiatus, come back, and the show will be live. So make yourselves available to all the features that can help support me and the network as a whole. So whether it be super chat, super thanks, super stickers, anything of that sort, to be a part of the show most importantly, and to support the network if you so choose. But for now, gsmc.cloud is the way to go for any tips or donations or things of that nature. So without further ado, let's jump right into today's show. Let's start off in the SEC, talking win projections. And this team, I really believe, is the epitome of a team in transition. They had a coach, a certain style of coaching that really didn't fit their program, and now they saw past it. They're looking to improve upon themselves, the organization, and the players on the field, create a more positive culture, and most importantly, really make themselves a force to be reckoned with in the SEC. And by doing so, they stripped down a little bit. They stripped down all the fanfare they created in the Jimbo Fisher era and brought in Mike Elko, a fresh coach out of Duke who really brought that program into the national spotlight. And he hired Colin Klein, a perfect offensive coordinator hire for young Connor Wegman to improve his career. So yes, I'm talking about Texas A&M. Now, when I remember the true beginning of the Texas A&M era where became more relevant, when Johnny Manziel was there and he was creating excitement surrounding this program, winning Heismans left and right, it seemed that Texas A&M were triumphing despite the fact that Johnny Manziel was such a public figure. But by hiring many years later, almost a decade or so later, a coach that really valued not necessarily money over talent, but not knowing how to use that talent, valuing recruiting for the sake of recruiting's sake. It really kind of set up this whole negative aura surrounding Texas A&M, so to speak. It really set them up in this place where you don't necessarily have much hope outside of, well, you think that these recruits will perform, but it's all about Jimbo Fisher's control. And all this control really led to where they were last season. It was a dark place for Texas A&M, program that wants to compete in the SEC. Is always in the picture because of this tension that Jimbo Fisher brings, and not necessarily of the positive sort. It all stemmed to a place where Texas A&M couldn't necessarily do that. But now they bring in Mike Elko. It's like a fresh new start. And with a schedule that has a lot of exciting games, I do believe that there's a light at the end of the tunnel. There is optimism surrounding this program again. And look at the over-under for them, 8.5 wins, which is where a lot of those teams trying to make a push into the playoffs, I consider, are sitting at 8.5 wins. So necessarily an 8-4 season, maybe not a playoff season, even in the 12-team CFP. But if Texas A&M were to win 9 games, maybe they would be in the consideration, if they play well enough in their 9 wins to help mitigate those 3 losses. So the questions surrounding Texas A&M now are, well, can Mike Elko, in a positive way, make them more humble, make them eat humble pie, so to speak, in terms of how they transition. Because what I like about the hire, and I mentioned Colin Klein in this hiring situation as well, Texas A&M's huge problem, like I said, was swinging for the fences, when in fact there are teams that have been successful gleaning more talent out of lesser recruits than teams that just go for all the 5-star recruits and not necessarily tap into their potential and really make them show that they are 5-star recruits. And that's what Texas A&M was doing in the Jimbo Fisher era. Now that Mike Elko's in, I think that not necessarily a small school mindset will be implemented, but a mindset where any player that comes into the Texas A&M program is welcome. It's not like there are a ton of 5-star recruits, and if you're, say, a 3-star recruit or something of that nature, you don't necessarily feel like you're going to get playing time. No, I think that this culture is going to be a good culture. That's what I mean. And I think that by becoming more oriented towards this inviting sense of acceptance of all players, that would make Texas A&M exponentially better. Now, when I look at this roster, I definitely feel like there's talent there, but the story being told is that the talent has to be got from somewhere. As of right now, you have Noah Thomas, Ja'Day Walker, and Moose Muhammad as the only 3 wide receivers who have been with this program for a decent amount of time. And all of them has shown flash of potential. That's what I always think about Texas A&M wide receivers, flashes of potential. But whether it be because of coaching, whether it be because, all these 5-star recruits have been fighting for playing time, they haven't necessarily put together a well-rounded enough season where either 1 or 2 of them can be seen as true go-to targets for Connor Wegman. And remember, Connor Wegman, I do have belief in this kid, but he hasn't played a full college football season. And in order to truly understand the nuances of playing in college football, I do think that you need to have a wide receiver plan set up. So that should be a number one goal for Mike Elko, how to get all of these wide receivers that you have that have proven that they can be talented to really understand certain roles in this offense. Then the name of the game after that in their rotation is certainly more transfer-oriented. You had Noah Thomas, who was a JUCO transfer. Now you bring in Cyrus Allen of Louisiana Tech fame. He had the most yards, actually, out of anyone on this Texas A&M wide receiver room at 778. So that should tell you a lot about the pratfalls that this position group has had to overcome or will have to overcome in the future if they want to get back to the upper echelon of SEC powerhouses. Let's talk about Connor Wegman for a second, because I think he's a very interesting young quarterback who, the bottom line with him being, he's going to be a star. I think last year, had, Connor Wegman played a full season, we could very well be talking about Jimbo Fisher seeing out his contract. But I think that he didn't necessarily save face because he was injured all the time. But also, I feel like Connor Wegman's one of those 5-star recruits where you have to let him kind of develop at his own pace. I think that Jimbo Fisher, had he remained head coach, would have pushed him way farther than a 5-star recruit should ever go. We saw it a little bit with Haynes King in his tenure. We saw it a little bit with Max Johnson when he had to come in and play. There always seems to be a pushy aspect of what Jimbo Fisher was doing at the QB position. But now that Mike Elko's coming in, he had Riley Leonard, who was the epitome of overcoming the odds a lot. He had a lot of injuries. A lot of people really didn't understand his game, but last season proved, even though he was injured, that he does have the talent, and now we see him off at Notre Dame playing for that program. And speaking of Notre Dame, we'll get to that schedule in a bit, but overall, I do have high hopes for Connor Wegman. Now let's get to the schedule, and speaking of Notre Dame, that is Texas A&M's opening game to start the season. A unique opportunity for both of these teams, because Notre Dame feels like, as an independent, they're going to have a tough road to hoe to get to the CFP. And a win against Texas A&M, an SEC program that should at the end of the day be ranked in the top 20, is a huge step forward for that because they don't have many of those games in their schedule as an independent. For Texas A&M, this will be a good barometer. This will be a good testing ground for them. If Mike Elko has a lot of things implemented, yet he understands Riley Leonard better than anyone. He understands his weaknesses better than anyone. And he knows how to exploit that. Then Texas A&M, that's a huge win for them. And then, after that, you have Missouri and LSU, two of your tougher games in your schedule, at home. And they're not necessarily the biggest SEC programs either. Obviously, Missouri, kind of were a pleasant surprise last year, but they haven't really earned the respect of the rest of the SEC or the selection committee. And then LSU is also kind of in transition. Who knows what Garrett Nussmeier will be. So getting those two at home is a huge boon to Texas A&M. And to top it all off, you miss out on Texas, Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss, which are all four teams that should, at the end of the day, be in the CFP. So, if you win two or all three of these games, you're in good shape if you're Texas A&M to make a push for the CFP. But it will all depend on if Texas A&M is ready to take that baby step in the right direction. Because Jimbo Fisher, the culture with him, really muddied the reputation of this program. It really made it more about money and control than just about playing the game of college football. That's what Mike Elko will bring. I'm taking the over here. I have high hopes for this program. I think that they're ready to compete. I completely forgot as well that they have Texas home. I'm really excited that that rivalry is getting revamped. And I'm hyped for that game. But I really have hope for this program. I really do. I like a lot of the moves they made. And by being more quote-unquote small school-oriented, even though I don't like calling it that, Texas A&M took a massive step in the right direction, and their win projections should only go up in the future for certain seasons. Now, that's about do it for this segment. Coming next, we talk about the cream of the crop in the SEC, one of the most dominant teams now in New Horizons themselves. We'll be right back to talk about them right after this break.